Now, the Deputy Senate President, Jibrin Barau, has hinted that the Senate is likely to pass the 27.5 trillion naira renewed hope budget presented by the President before the House on December 19th, right before embarking on the Christmas and New Year break. The annual fiscal budget passed the second reading last week Friday, leaving some worried members of the Senate concerned about the failure of the executive to provide details of the budget.
The president mentioned that fresh loans would be collected, while the government would also explore public-private partnership agreements to finance critical infrastructure to fund the budget. Meanwhile, economic experts have asked for a complete breakdown of how the following will be used in various sectors, such as 1.32 trillion naira for infrastructure, 534 billion naira for social development and poverty reduction, 2.2 trillion naira to education, and so on.
There's also a conversation between experts and citizens concerning the cost of governance. Now, to break this down, we have the co-founder of Budgit, Seun Onigbinde. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure being here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
All right.
Yeah.
Just to highlight, Mr. Onigbinde is currently joining us from the UAE, where, of course, is partaking in COP28. So we definitely will be asking you about that. What number of the 1,411 you are. If you are number 622, we'll find out. But I want to first of all ask, just quickly, if there's anything to worry about with the speed with which the budget has been passed, or rather, it's been passed. They're talking about doing it before the 19th of December. Many people would have said maybe it should have gone through proper review by the National Assembly. Many, questions should have been asked first before it is passed. But this 10th National Assembly doesn't seem to have any interest in waiting.
I think it's unfortunate. Thank you again. The budget was just presented last week, Wednesday. And after the budget has been presented, Nigerians are yet to even see the detailed breakdown. Some legislators have also mentioned that they don't have the detailed breakdown of the budget. Someone mentioned that it's in a flash drive and it's still being printed out. So we don't have the required information to be able to engage, interrogate. In previous years, we always send a memo to the National Assembly. We call them, we send the memo, we always include suspicious and frivolous items. Send to them about things that we believe are not of necessity or are not important to the average Nigerian. So the National Assembly rushing this is foreclosing the opportunity for Nigerians to have a robust debate. The debate for the budget is not in the gross summaries, it's in the detailed breakdown. And so not having a detailed breakdown, intent to rush the budget speaks to a strange behavior that has become typical of the National Assembly. I mean, the 10th National Assembly. Let's not forget that the issue of the Resident Electoral Commission, this was the same way that decision was rushed before Nigerians could blink. People who were deemed to be of partisan leanings were made Resident Electoral Commissioners of INEC. So I think it's in time the National Assembly understands its role in a democracy as a safeguard, as a guardrail of its democracy, and should act independently as it should be. We have a supplementary budget that was passed last month. So there's enough time to really look into to give it another 1 month, the end of January, to pass the budget and get all it over and done. Not trying to pass the budget within 2 weeks, over 3,000 pages. I don't think it works that way. If they want to scrutinize. Also, it's very important that this is the initial budget of the Tinubu administration. So it should set the right tone in terms of how does it deliver on its promises, especially in its manifesto. How does it fit into the current macroeconomic environment where oil prices have increased, inflation is rife, exchange rate devaluation has happened, and the Nigerians are drowning under pain? How does he also speak to broad agendas around human capital development, infrastructure development, and social sector development? So all of that has to happen. If all of that is not happening, and you're trying to do that within 2 weeks, it just means that you just want to sign off what the president has presented quickly. And that's not helpful in any way. Yeah.
Is there anything to be happy about? I mean, it's been dubbed the budget of renewed hope. So would you say that there's anything to be happy about here? We're seeing that the budget deficit has been reduced from 6.1% of GDP to 3.88%. Is that something to be excited about? Some would argue that maybe it could have been worse than this. Is that something to be excited about?
The main things to be excited about, one is the fact that a bit of interest in macroeconomic stability is happening in some sort of way. So I see the fact that the presidency is a little bit big on the fact that we can't just continue to borrow haphazardly. So there's a bit of intentionality in generating more revenue. Now, generating the revenues is one part, spending it efficiently is another part, putting them in the right project that would make impact into the average Nigeria is another part. So for me, I feel that we should be excited a little bit about the fact that there's a bit of intentionality to generate revenue. The federal government has set up a tax committee or a fiscal reforms committee. Laws will be brought to the National Assembly in due course. So I think I see something that's positive. I don't expect it to be the same government with Buhari that just printed continuously until it engulfed the country in inflation. The second thing that one looks also that maybe one could feel excited about is also the fact that there's a bit of more intentionality on education and health, especially health. Doesn't meet the mark in terms of percentages, but we see more investment among numbers we put into health. There's even a dedicated presidential committee on healthcare investment. So we want to see all of that come into play as we go along the way. But I feel until we see the full details of the budget, that's when we can make informed debate. Because wherever we're speaking now are still broad level analysis that don't speak enough about what exactly is the intent of the current budget being passed.
Okay, I want to, also ask about something, that showed up. We're going to come back to talk about the budget 2023-2024 and all of that. But there's something with the supplementary budget that, was interesting to see. And that was a letter by Tracker about a week ago. That was, or more than a week ago, actually, was directed to the federal government to take out frivolous items in the supplementary budget 2023. The government, of course, then replied last week saying that the budget had already been passed and so, or been approved rather by Mr. President. And so there was really nothing much that could have been done about removing it. Yeah, that's the letter on your screen, to the head of Tracker NG. It says, I'm directed to acknowledge the receipt of your letter dated November 3rd. And of course, the subject matter was to inform you that the President has already assented to the 2023 Supplementary Appropriation Bill, and such a petition to review and remove the so-called frivolous items has been overtaken by events. Mr. Onigbinde, I would like that you respond to this. And this is important because we claim to be in a new, government, a government of renewed hope, a government that, of course, is trying to correct some of the wrongs of the previous administration. But there's almost nothing from their actions since they took over office that shows that they understand what's at stake in Nigeria and what must be done, and understand that they, cannot continue to spend money lavishly, the way that it probably was done before. And how is it that, the government doesn't understand that there are frivolous items in budget that have been spotted and must be taken out? It doesn't matter.
It's unfortunate. And I think it's been done in the context of current financial crisis that most Nigerians have found themselves. When our team, Budgit runs Tracker, so when our team wrote that letter, there was a culmination of anger and grievances of average Nigerians on digital media and offline that these items do not speak to the required frugality that the current environment requires. And you could see some of those items there. Purchase of operational vehicles for the First Lady, SUV vehicles for the State House. You could see office quarters at the State House in Abuja, in Lagos. Things that were really not necessary. And we wrote that. And what did you say? Before we could even blink, the National Assembly has passed the budget. And the next, the President has signed it, and this is the response we get. So we are saying that the budget should reflect reality of the average Nigerians. The government should not live like lords of manor, should not live in an ostentatious way, while they're asking citizens to continuously and persistently sacrifice. That should not be the situation of things. So we're making this case and we are unapologetic about it, and we continue to want to ask those questions.
All right. We'd like you to, give us an insight into some of the frivolous items on this supplementary budget that has, in this case, been assented to by the President, and what the next steps are. We've seen that over 1,800 Nigerians have signed the petition for the frivolous items to be reviewed or removed from the budget. But like we've seen in the letter, this budget has already been assented to. So what are the next steps?
Next step is to keep piling on the pressure. I mean, the president has decided, what has decided is in the law. I mean, so except want to go to court and to go and challenge it, that's the only option. And on what basis would we be able to win that kind of battle? Because it's definitely the law has been signed, the president has signed it, and it speaks to the moral fiber of the president. I mean, he should, and also the ethical concerns. He should lead the example. And the only way you lead the example is if you're asking Nigeria to sacrifice in this era, you have to also show them what exactly you are denying yourself, how you sacrifice. This also speaks to the culture that is permitted. You will see that beyond the State House renovation to happen in Lagos for around 4 billion naira, the FCT minister has come up together and says an abandoned vice presidential quarters in the State House Abuja, he wants to spend 15 billion naira. There are schools in Abuja, FCT metropolis that are bad. There are teaching hospitals, tertiary. There's a university there that needs help. He doesn't want to spend money on that. There are people in the Abuja metropolis that need palliatives, that need support. He doesn't want to spend money on that. He wants to spend money on, a building that's been abandoned for decades. And I don't think the foreign vice president complains on any level of discomfort where he's staying. So, I mean, this is the situation where we are in the most challenging period of Nigerians in the last 3 decades. And the government continues to spend as if it will not run out of money. And there are no implications for all of this. It's unfortunately, and I think it's really, really a sad commentary on the state of affairs.
Yeah, really, really sad. And of course, someone might even say heartbreaking. I'd like that you also speak on 2 things. The first one is, it takes a bit of audacity and maybe indifference to what Tracker was talking about for that letter to be replied in that manner. I don't know if you understand. It shows that whoever it is that typed that letter, and of course the office that typed that letter, was audacious enough to tell you and tell Tracker that, well, it's been assented to, so otilo, as they will say it in in Yoruba. That's one thing. And then I also want your thoughts on the National Assembly itself. The 10th National Assembly, the Senate President regularly wears a cap, with the infinity sign on it. Do you have fears as to whether the National Assembly will truly be able to checkmate the excesses, and of course, mostly concerning spending of the current administration?
I think the first thing, it speaks to the culture of government. Civil society, the government is supposed to lead. There is no point, there's no sense. When those items were presented, either to the budget office, when they were submitted to the budget office or submitted to the president, those president documents didn't just appear at the National Assembly. They were deliberated upon at the Federal Executive Council before they were just sent to the National Assembly. So someone should have supported it. Someone should ask questions there. These items speaks of insensitivity. We need to slow it down. We need to consider it for a later date, maybe 2025. If we're going to spend 1.4 billion on buying vehicles, let's buy one that's worth 25 million. Let's buy a vehicle for 50 million. There are Chinese Chang'an vehicles that sold for 25, 50 million, 30 million naira, or not, or innocent. So you didn't need to buy an extra. They are operational vehicles for crying out loud. So you didn't need to be bulletproof or in any way. And this is not even for a recognized office on that. This is the First Lady. Has no constitutional role, has no basis in legislation. And so those are the situations. But like I said, it speaks to the moral fiber of the current administration and also the culture that permeates in that government. People are already calling it's an Owambe culture. So it's an Owambe government in some sort of way, which means, and this speaks also the number of people you find as government delegates to the current COP28. It's kind of shocking. By the time you bring that into National Assembly, that's supposed to be the guardrail, the last frontier of review for Nigeria, because it's the Nigerian people's house. National Assembly being able to do what it's supposed to do now gets us worried. And I've cited an example of what happened during the INEC reg ratification, and now you hear things like, and same thing happened in the supplementary budget where things were rushed, and same thing is being hinted now for the 2024 budget. I get so worried about those National Assembly really understand its role. Not that it's not in subservience to the president. It's actually a representative of the people. So it looks like there still needs to be a bit of reorientation in that regard. some sort of way, because I'm worried about some of their current approaches. I'm not saying they are adversarial to the president. I'm not saying fight the president. I'm just saying have principles, have rules, and stick to them in the interest of the average Nigerian.
All right, now let's come back to conversations about the 2024 budget. And I really like the point that you've highlighted there, that the National Assembly must remember that it's not subservient to the presidency. But looking at the 2024 budget, how realistic would you say this budget is? Or would you say, so far from the information that we have, it's just merely aspirations? And I ask this because if we look at the projected revenue, projected expenditure of the budget, I think it's roughly 27.5 trillion, 18.32 trillion. But why I'm asking is because there are a lot of assumptions that are currently not our reality. First assumption, of course, is 750 naira to the dollar. There's also the assumption of inflation rate at 21%. We are currently at like 27, 28%, and projections are that it will increase by December. So with what we have so far, would you say that this budget is a realistic budget? Because hope is not a strategy.
To be honest with you, to be very realistic, the revenues projections are too high. Revenue is put at 18 trillion naira.
Yes.
We're putting the dollar, the oil price at the margin. Currently is at $82 per barrel, putting at $77 per barrel. And so I worry about the revenue estimation. Also because a lot of things have been padded into the revenue of government. Now we even recognize grants as revenue. We now recognize even the net earnings of government-owned enterprises when it could have just been operating surpluses and like that. So there's a bit of creative accounting that is in that revenue. And that's why when you look at some of the World Bank or IMF analysis of Nigerian revenue, it's not in the same numbers with the ones that the government puts out, because they take the shaft away from the substance in some way. I feel that the only way out, in all of this, is that the government should go back to basic principles, make sure that you optimize revenue, and there are a few ways to do this without burdening Nigerians. There's the Taiwo Idili-led committee spoke about 18 trillion was given as tax waivers recently. So who should benefit from tax waivers? On what basis are those tax waivers been approved for those entities? So those are the kind of things you bring forward in some sort of way, instead of burdening Nigerians more. Then you also have to now look at frugality, expenditure efficiency. If all of that's happening, if you raise 100 billion naira, if you're not going to spend it properly, or you keep spending it in the current effective procurement system, we're not going to get the kind of results, the kind of things that we truly want.
So much frivolities you've talked about. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time. I would have loved to ask you about COP28 and if that's considered one of the frivolities. Mr. Seun Onigbinde, thank you very much for joining us. Seun, I beg your pardon, Onigbinde. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, and enjoy the rest of your time there. We're waiting for you back here.